Get ready. This is going to be tight. Out of turn 4, ladies and gentlemen. The All-American 400 is underway.
Got to be careful. The bumps here can get you every time. Entering the corner, exiting the corner.
Fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's going in the outside, both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taking Anderson! Anderson's up to him!
Oh my God! Oh, big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go!
Oh no! That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my God!
God, what?
Place your bets and see if you've played your cards right, because we're at Las Vegas Motor Speedway for round 29 of the NASCAR iRacing series here on the iRacing Esports Network. And today is going to be wild and something else, because these cars and this downforce at this track means full throttle for most of the way around this circuit all day long. So we are going to see some pretty crazy racing, and you'll see it all live thanks to SimSpeed TV. My name is Ryan Jones. Alongside me is Justin Prince, Jay Kennedy, behind the scenes, working the cameras on this one. Justin, we got some decent drivers racing with us tonight, but we saw the Cup Series on Tuesday, and even they had a big incident. And I think with how close they are today, you might expect the same today.
Yeah, it was a pandemonium-filled race, so to speak, especially the second half of that night, because two things. One, lots of speed carried around the track, and two, tire sets. Multiple different teams ran out of tire sets during that respective race, and in turn, helped feed into what was a chaotic final 50-60 laps of that respective race. But tonight, different weather conditions, different time of day. As well, one extra tire set for the drivers who run in NIS this week, meaning these competitors, they're going to have a little bit more flexibility on the strategy, but also will be looking for redemption to try and see if they can find their way to victory lane tonight here in NIS competition.
Qualifying, as always, is currently underway. Not sure how many drivers will see set times. We saw an unusual amount of drivers set times. Last time out, Pat Moose currently is the fastest of just 3 that have decided to head out and do some laps. Benson and Justice and Myers also join that list. 134 laps ahead of us, so we're going to need to see 2 pit stops in order to make it home. And as you mentioned, 1 extra set of tyres means that might not be quite as big of an issue as it was in the Cup Series, but if we have a caution at 5 or so laps before that critical lap, which is somewhere around lap 70, would you say, Justin? It might spice things up a bit.
Yeah, might open up a little bit of that strategy card. The most drivers who felt like they could make for the Coke race on Tuesday was about 62 laps. but it's not quite as simple here. Some drivers have stretched it up to 64-ish laps in a open competition this week, with it being a bit of a hotter racetrack and in turn not going as quickly as you would in the pack for the nighttime. In other words, there's a lot of possible ways you can play this. Some drivers may go with the coach strategy of going 40 to 45 per run if they split the race evenly in thirds. Others may go 50-50 and then finish the run in 34 laps if it goes green. Others may go as long as they can and then hope for a caution in the late going and try and save some sets or get some track position. There's various ways you can play it as a driver tonight. But the main thing has to be noticed though and said. If you do not have your setup dialed in perfectly to not only save the tires, but carry enough momentum and speed in the corners and in turn enough drag down the straightaways or reduce said drag, you're going backwards tonight. Because the top teams have limited their tire wear to about maybe 25% at the very most during 40 lap runs.
Being in the right place at the right time going to be critical as well. It might race a little bit like a Daytona or a Talladega where sometimes you just can't go anywhere. If they're all stacked up in front of you side by side and you've got your foot flat to the floor, you've got to make sure you're picking the right line when things start to get moving. Got plenty of time to put yourself in that spot. With a couple of full stints ahead of us, Noshi and Walsh out there on the racetrack. A minute left in qualifying. He will just about get one lap in, and he should actually complete both his laps. We have over 20 drivers doing times in qualifying. It seems like the further into the season we get, the more drivers put times down in qualifying as he lifts off the throttle and goes 23rd.
Well, track position's kind of important here in Las Vegas. We've seen that in the Coke race, but as well, you don't want to necessarily have to try and charge through 20 cars, do you not, Ryan? Because that chews up your tires, and in turn, also risk overheating, trying to stay in the draft, and so forth. In other words, it's much easier as a driver tonight to try and plan things out if you start, say, in the 8th position than 28th spot, because in that case, you're going to have tough sledding to try and make sure you do it cleanly. You don't get involved in any trouble early on in the race, which has happened in some cases with cars set up on the looser end. And in turn, it's going to be important to make sure you are as safe as possible to compete up towards the front tonight.
This is how they line up. Boyd Hogan has snatched pole by 0.02 of a second from James Mullins, who will start on his outside. Daniel Wilborn and Cecil Green occupy the second row of the grid. Blake Neer and Brad Davies starting 5th and 6th. Seth Knoll and Cale Gale starting 7th and 8th. Justin Levine and Keith Bridgman on row 5.
JD Willis starts 11 tonight for Nexus Esports. He'll start alongside one of the ERG cars. It's Jonathan Hernandez. Kyle Mayers, one of the drivers tonight from Phase 2, starting 13th with Patrick Moose in 14th. Joshua Campbell starts in 15th with Jason Brophy in 16th. Tyler Justice and Sean Powell, the teammates, start 17th and 18th. Johnny Baldridge, Jeep in the field tonight, starts in 19th. He'll start alongside Matthew Benson, who's in 20th.
Matt Forcarper and Mike Bruno on row 11 ahead of Ossie and Walsh and Jesse Atchison. Timu Tuika starts 25th. Michael Guest on his outside. Kane Cook and Justin Botello 27th and 28th. Harrison Lyon and Samuel Roush round out your top 30, rounding out your field. You've got Ashton Crowder, Jesse Atchison, Michael Guest, Kane Cook, Harrison Lyon. So the actual starting grid is slightly different to what came up on your screen there. But either way, 23 drivers set times. The rest were set by iRatings. Weather conditions, reasonably cool out there, actually. Not going to struggle too much in terms of a greasy track. It's a little past 4 p.m. in sim time, so we'll be finishing well and truly before the sun goes down. And I don't expect the track to get much hotter as well. It's in that stage of the afternoon where it only gets cooler.
That's been actually one of the more difficult things to try and plan around, because in the A Opens this week, it's been around on average the 93-degree range. So most teams have been able to have to build more grip into these cars to be able to handle the speeds and not burn the tires up in the cooler temperatures. Those winds as well, keep in mind, could cause some turbulence around the track tonight. gusting already as high as 20 miles an hour in sim. That could cause some chaos in the corners for stabilization, as well as some struggles down the straightaways.
Yeah, 31 kilometers an hour. In terms of the measurement I recognize, it is very strong. You're right, so that is going to wreak havoc. It could also increase the speeds at one end of the racetrack compared to the other, with a bit of a tailwind pushing them along as we roll off on our formation lap, and we are almost ready for our 134 lap game of roulette around Vegas.
Going to be very key to try and get important positions early on. Some of the teams are built up to be more on the long run, as in once you get 15-20 laps in, we'll see a lot of cars start to charge. Others are going to be more set up for the very short run and start to fall off. So if you are some of these competitors, don't be surprised to see some 2 to 3 wide early on. For others, they may elect to just let people go and then pick everyone off one by one, especially if we get green flag pit stops tonight. This is going to be fun.
It's Boyd Hogan who's got himself on the pole at Las Vegas. And the iRacing.com Ford Mustang is going to dive out of the way, and he will be in control of the field. Coming to the green, up through the gears, and away we go, racing from Vegas. Lap 1's going to go to Boyd Hogan, but James Mullins has got them all behind him. They are already 3 wide, a little bit further back, and they immediately decide not to do that. That was Cale Gale all the way down to the inside. And now Mullins is going to lose out as Daniel Wilborn gets to his inside out of turn 2. And you can see already how hard it is to pass if you're in the wrong lane, as the inside fires off well through 3 and 4. The outside goes nowhere.
Yeah, there were so many drivers I spoke with just prior to that Coke race who said in 1 and 2, and at that time, if you weren't on the middle line, you were likely going backwards. But here's the thing, if you weren't on the bottom in 3 and 4, 2, in official racing this week, you're also going backwards. It burns the tires much more, and it's so difficult to build your car to handle the bumps in the middle of 1 and 2 right along the white line. So many of these teams are going to need to find a hole and get single file and quick, otherwise they're going to get freight trained, just like Mullins, who in his purple car has gone completely backwards by his 4 spots in the span of a lap.
You can see the preferred lane, though. Boyd Hogan not running the bottom, opting to run a couple lanes up the racetrack. And, you know, that's where Mullins was running. But when you're side by side, the air gets taken off your car and it doesn't quite work out. Through 3 and 4, the lane is different. It's down the bottom side of the racetrack. And that's where Mullins was really hurting us. On board with Seth Knoll here to his inside. That's Jonathan Hernandez.
That's one of the ERG Machines Esport Racing Group, which has sent drivers to the Cup Series in the past with Knoll. So expect the Nexus cars, though, to be good on the long run. That's where the focus seemed to have been for this week. Same for the Legacy Esports Machines. They like to keep it calm and save tires for 15 laps, then start pushing and gathering up the speed. Compare that to Hernandez. He's been trying to make a lot of passes, has gained 3 spots, and seems to be really trimmed down for the straightaways to be able to gain time there. And then, in turn, has to back off the gas more than some of the errors in the corner to match their speed.
Whoa, someone's dived down the apron. Oh no, that's going to cause a big incident in turn 3. Caution's going to come out. Keith Bridgman is involved, but he wasn't the catalyst. Someone had an issue and dove to the apron and couldn't keep it down there.
That was Bridgman, actually, who was on the apron, and I think he blew a motor. That was one of the main concerns on Tuesday with how hot some of the cars got in the 290s in some cases. But down the back straightaway here, just popped the motor into the corner, and then once he tried to get it on the apron to get out of the way, just went back, crossed the track, and just right up into the traffic. Just hit the bumps.
And the number 4 car there was left with nowhere to go. Who was that? JD Willis. And he went for a big tumble, so his day, you would expect, will be done as well. This was his view of it. There was nothing he could do.
To quote what he said on the radio, "Welp, there's nothing you can do when that happens in front of you," where one of the main things that you have to think about when you lose a motor like that is a lot of times you lose the feel in the steering wheel, especially with the most recent builds this year. You lose that feeling, it becomes very hard to get it out of the way and try and keep it straight. Just seemed like part of that case. We've had mixed pit calls though. Many of your lead cars stayed out, but others electing to take fuel only, and a couple their first set of tires that we talked about with that flexibility tonight.
Yeah, so a few drivers down on pit road: Seth Knoll, Sean Powell, Matthew Benson, but most of the field electing to stay out, including Boyd Hogan and most of his fellow drivers up inside of that top 10. So lap 7 brought us our first caution of the day, and you got to wonder, that engine popped very early.
Yeah, that's the main thing. The first 10 laps is when the engine gets the hottest. Drivers like Tyler Justice and Kane Cook also taking some time to get some damage repair done, etc. But to get to the exact point I'm trying to refer to, a lot of these teams go right up to the very limit, where in real life you may creep slowly to it. The thing is, you do what makes you the fastest, and if that is being at the razor's edge where you're just inside the temps, where you just have to save the tires and manage the temps for 10 laps, and in turn you're the fastest car on the track for the next 40, the top technical alliances are going to take that chance. Unfortunately for the case of Bridgman, who with Legacy Esports has been with that group for a couple weeks and has been showing some good speed this week, that wasn't the case, and just couldn't get the temps, it looks like, cooled down enough to where it couldn't pop the motor.
We'll see if that means any other drivers decide to take a little bit of tape off their car, maybe, after seeing or hearing about that engine going this early on. But lights are out on the pace car, so we're going to go back green this time by. No change at the front. It's still Boyd Hogan. Daniel Wilborn was able to pick up a solitary spot, so he'll restart from the outside. Mullins all the way back in 6th for this one. He'll be hoping for a bit of a better launch than he got last time. Green flag's gonna wave. Racing once again, and a bad launch for Daniel Wilborn. He is getting a big push from Justin Levine, trying to get him up through the gears.
Struggle all week in official racing. Most of the drivers who are the control car have started in first gear, got an extra bit of boost to help that line. That just really helped Davies, Near, and a couple others get going. Already though, 3 wide for second.
Blake Near thought about the middle as they came into turn 3. The idea became less favourable in his mind, and he decided to tuck back in behind Brad Davies. And Daniel Wilborn trying to side draft him down through the tri-oval. Works out for him. And look how high he's running. 1 and 2, trying to keep the momentum up as Boyd Hogan shoots up the racetrack. Brad Davies trying to take the lead away for the first time today. Can we get a new leader here at Las Vegas through 3 and 4? Brad Davies to the front.
Then Hogan just said, you know what, I know what speed you have in that car. I'm just going to let you go and see what happens for this long run. If you fight too hard, your car's going to feel the payment for it. Specifically in the later part of the run, where you're going to be really snap loose on the chassis or the tire on the right rear, or very, very tight on exit. So Hogan, I think, just playing the cards right, where why fight it? Why aggressively fight for this spot when you can save the tires now to focus on the big picture?
He's still to the outside of Brad Davies, though. Pretty good lap for him up top. And across the line, there was only 3,000th of a second to separate them. I've noticed a few drivers as well having a bobble here through 1 and 2. Mainly the guys on the inside, just shooting up the track a little bit. At that time by Daniel Wilborn had one. Now, what's the story there, Justin?
Well, one is the bumps, which really destabilize the cars. Some teams have built their cars for the bumps. Others go to the middle line to drive around said bumps. It's much different from February, where you would arc your way down the track and still go along the bumps as the best line around. So in turn, that's part of it as well. Just how the chassis are built to be able to sustain speed. If you don't have your car set up to where it minimizes tire wear and ends up in turn maximize the amount of speed you can have to the corner, you're likely going to feel a lot of struggles tonight throughout this entire race, especially in the long run. And that's where I think right about now is where a lot of these teams will start seeing that point in terms of green flag laps on the tires, 15 laps in.
It's a stalemate right now between Brad Davies and Lloyd Hogan. Neither of them finding much ground on the other and remaining side by side for the lead of the race. And Blake Neer has not really been able to do anything about it. Just sitting there in third watching and learning, seeing how those two lanes compare to each other. And he's got Justin Levine right in behind him. Jesse Atchison, meanwhile, up into 10th place, started this one from 32nd, finding big ground early on.
Well, that's not a surprise, right? He's one of the drivers known for electing to start from the very back of the field. Nathan Lyon also in that grouping, as well a couple others like Oliveira and several others also cutting through. But for others, just getting to a rhythm. A lot of work was put in, for example, by some of the low-line cars you start seeing on your screen to try and figure out everything. Try different suspension, soft, hard, everything in between. Now that work's starting to show where their cars are some of the bigger movers as well, who started in the mid-pack.
Harrison Lyon as well has come up from 35th, 11th. He's just gone by Jesse Atchison. And as always, he is flying towards the front of this field. Eduardo Oliveira in 18th. Started this one from 29th, so he's found about half of the progress he needs to get to the front. So keep an eye on those three as we get further into this run.
Well, it isn't a surprise to see drivers like Lyon and company come in, right? We've seen it several times. There's also the fact that, pick this up from a couple different groups and technical alliances, where you have different variations for different scenarios, where they may have something where it's very high downforce, something that is more quick on the straightaways and you have to let it roll in the corners. There's different philosophies you have for different scenarios. It's almost like a retro / old school format, where back in the day where you would have more fixed weather scenarios before the dynamic track and dynamic weather came in, where you'd have a setup for a 78 air temp, a setup for an 85 air temp, a 73 air temp. Now it's going back towards that, where you want just a couple choices for different scenarios to feel out, okay, will this car work? How will this car work versus this car, etc. To add some extra data to get to.
We're on board right now with Cecil Green, who's also gone backwards a little bit since the start of this race. Just like James Mullins, started 4th, but now back there in 12th position. That was Cale Gale going by. Now that Cecil's got back in line down low, we'll be hoping to regain some of that lost momentum and maybe try to work on moving forward again. Speaking of forward, Blake Neer has got Patrick Moose trying to do just that. Levine's got by him already, so Blake Neer not showing quite as much pace as maybe he did at the very start of this stint.
And again, I think it's just where you start having to crack the throttle a little bit more than your competitors. You're likely going backwards, because the second you lose that preferred line, you're going to get potentially freight train once again. Moose showing exactly that, just has enough cut in the car to be able to hold enough throttle to just get to the inside of this 14 machine to be able to try and make the pass just like that.
I wonder if anyone's deciding to save a bit of fuel on this one, Justin. You said that the fuel knows about 62 laps. It's a 134 lap race. There's no way anyone can save enough to stretch it to one.
Not in my mind or imagination. If we get a caution towards that mark, I wouldn't be surprised to see drivers play that game, but honestly, it's going to be way too risky to try and save because we're talking about 134 laps. You split up the race up the middle, that's about 10 laps out of the window, up to. You're not going to make it if you try and save that much amount of fuel, and it's going to lose you so much time on the racetrack. This whole lead pack, by the way, is some of the closest we've seen all week on iRacing and NIS competition. Thursday, it was more spread apart, where you had groupings of cars spread apart half the track. Tonight, already, just 25 laps in, first to 32nd, 6.6 seconds among them.
Brad Davies doing a good job now. After that many laps he spent in the stalemate with Boyd Hogan, he's now jumped away to a half a second advantage over Boyd, and I reckon he's probably broken free of that draft as well, so that's actually a positive for Boyd. It means his car isn't being affected as much. He's going to be able to save a little bit of his tyres without having to push through the air of that car in front. Means his fuel is going to be up there though. So is Davies.
I'm not concerned about the fuel. It's more so one, tires, and two. Can you as a competitor keep up? Because the thing I'm noticing from Davies to Hogan right now at this point of the run is Davies has better drive off, where it comes down to the chassis, but also how you build the car for the aerodynamics. And Davies is just able to just lift the touch, hit the gas hard, pull back anytime he loads in the apex, and gain another 1 or 2 100ths of a second. Compare that to groupings like this. These drivers are about in the 2s right now. The lead cars, they're in the flats for 31 seconds.
You got to consider the field spread as well, don't you? Back here where Harrison, Lyon, Hernandez, Mullins are, they're racing other cars and they're not able to take the line they want to take, which means they're losing a bit of time there. Plus the dirty air, probably affecting them a little bit as well. Sometimes you see some very fast cars buried in the pack, unable to make progress purely because they're in traffic.
I don't know if it's too much of a factor tonight, but the thing is, it does in effect how much draft you get down the straights, as well as affects how much tire work and factored in. It's not as bad as in the past, but for drivers who did not adjust to the data, this, for example, just today it seemed, a lot of teams went and changed their philosophies. They're going backwards. Hernandez, we've seen, is going backwards. Drivers like back here, they're trying to go 2 to 3 wide to try and figure out where they want to go. Keep in mind, just about everyone who pit for tires or ended up going down, except for Cale Gale, have struggled to even get through this pack of cars.
This is Michael Guest in this big pack, and he shoots the middle there. Now he's got nowhere to go. No, he's going to go low. All the way down to the inside of the racetrack. Up top, he's got the 32 of Jason Brophy. Otty and Walsh was one of the other cars he got by there, and he slides up in front of Brophy with a little wiggle as well. Slow progress, but progress nonetheless for Guest.
That could have been a little bit ugly for the team doing esports and dead zone driver, but he's starting to catch up to the pace we've seen from Lyon early on. These cars seem to have, and we've seen this especially in the Coke race, be better from this point of the run all the way up to pit stops. Once the track rubber's in its well, it fits perfectly. For example, remember when Lyon led that lap before the first big one of the race at Las Vegas on Tuesday? He was as far back as 16th during that first green flag run. That's how much that setup dropped off, and in turn, once the tires balanced back, charged back forward.
Ooh, and here is Harrison Lyon. The gap opens up for him on the low side, and he's able to get underneath. Matt Forcapa. Cale Gale in front of him, punching the hole for him. And James Mullins looks like he's starting to come back. He's not dropping off, that's for sure, like he was earlier on. He's at least holding station, and I reckon he's got a little bit of pace still left underneath that purple machine. If he can just find some clean air to work with.
Yeah, if anything, I feel like he's just trying to sort out, can I get myself past this low-line racing machine in front of me? That's Matt Forcapa specifically, who's up in the top 3 in the overall standings. So I think, again, just Mullins is trying to play this out, pick his spots. You don't want to just plow it on in and try and set it in. That's where you can just overheat that right front. You overheat the tires too much, you're not getting them cooled back down enough to where you have that peak performance you're looking for. Speaking of performance, Hogan's closed back into under 4/10 again on Davies, up at the front.
Yeah, I just saw that. His car's starting to come back to him. Last time by, Davies was able to respond to Hogan's advances, but through 1 and 2 on this lap, it's come down again. So I wonder if Hogan was just saving his tyres a little bit over that early phase of the race. Behind them, Patrick Moose and Justin Levine. Moose is coming forward. Remember, he got by Nia. Now he's got by Levine. So his car's working nicely. Though he's 1.3 seconds back from the lead, so maybe a bit too much left to do to get up there before caution comes out. And behind them, Cale Gale had a slide coming into turn 1, and that's all the invitation that Harrison Lyons needed to get by him down the back straight.
Levine taking the spot right on back with the pull of the draft once again. But the more they fight like this, the more it just hurts them by about a 10th or 2 a lap. So they need to be smart on these moves. But in regards to drivers like Gale, that's where if you push too hard, trying to take advantage of tires, you're going to feel the payment of them, right as I said at this point. And Gale, he's drifting around the corners behind them in this next group, just about 4 tires drifting tiny bits each. These cars are meanwhile up in front are just planted right to be able to roll their way around the bottom of the track.
Yeah, the setups are working very nicely. Davies has definitely responded. The gap's opened up now between those top 2, and we'll see what Levine can do. Looks like him and Moose might be pretty closely matched when it comes to pace, because they've swapped positions a couple times now. So right on board with Blake Nia. Mullins has got by him through 1 and 2 on this lap. So it does look like he is indeed starting to come back forward.
Like I said, lots of teams have focused for this point of the run onward, where if they can gain the time back here, they're happy. If they lose time here, they're spending the next 3 hours rebuilding their entire setups, most likely, if you are a well-organized technical alliance. So in other words, say you're like the Cecil Greens, or the Daniel Wilborns, or the Joshua Campbells of the world, you're tearing your car apart and trying to figure out, how am I going to get this speed? Otherwise, I'm going to get smoked the next time we go to a 1.5 mile circuit on the service.
Look at that. Matt Forcapa running the low line, while everyone in front of him runs the middle lane through the racetrack. Now, I wonder if that's a one-off, or if he's committed to doing that. And if he is, what could be the reason for that?
I actually found, and I tried this myself doing this at times, where you take a certain line, if you have a certainly built type of set, you can actually balance the tire wear by charging the corner and then trying to go up the track. Yes, it loses you time, but it just at least from me at least, depending on how well your car is built, can balance out that tire wear. It's not something I recommend you do, Ryan, as a driver, but it's something where it's an option to make sure you're not slipping and sliding, trying to get around that second groove, and in turn trying to get the right front to catch back up.
Well, he didn't do it that time by, and he's not done it this time by, so maybe it was a one-off. He's tucked back into the tyre tracks of Blake Neer and everybody else. Side by side back here, Ashton Crowder starting to make some progress through the field, and they got tight coming into turn 3. That's Eduardo Oliveira, who has to lift off to let him go, and in the process, Michael Guest says, thank you very much, goes by as well, and Timu Toika will make it 3 for the price of 1.
Yeah, that was a little bit dirty there from Crowder, just late arced him. He was going to make the pass regardless. Instead, he said, you know what? You hold me up, I'm going to cost you time. Now the question's going to be what if he does it again to Seth Noel coming up here. He is your Wednesday night NIS winner, should know. Or he had a fairly dominant performance, led more than 60 laps. Here he goes.
Switches to the inside of Seth Noel. He took a very late arc into turn 3 there, which gave him momentum coming out of the corner. And into turn 1, able to run the middle lane. That allows Guest to get to his inside. Now they'll run side by side, although Guest might just tuck in behind him here at through 3. Crowder's able to cover him off. So these two now coming together in unison, and you can see how that one spot has cost Noel a lot more. And again, just like Eduardo Oliveira found out, it's 3 for the price of 1, because Timo Tsuika went through as well.
Next up, Jonathan Hernandez in this fight, but we're just about towards where we're expecting pit stops here. Now the question's going to be, will drivers go with the 50-50 and then 34 to the end? Will drivers try and stretch it, or will they go for the undercut? So far, no one's peeked their way to the line quite yet, but a massive block by Crowder trying to get the push from Guest here.
And he's going to get it, and they'll use the top side to navigate their way by Jonathan Hernandez, who backs out of the throttle and lets them go on by. I think we might see drivers go a little bit longer, because we did have that caution, which would have enabled them to save an extra couple of laps, maybe, under that yellow flag period, as Guest just got by Crowder, who let him do so. We look back to Patrick Moose, who, well, had decent short to mid-run pace. The long-run pace, though, I think isn't there. After Levine got by, Harrison Lyon also went through, Cale Gale's also gone by, and James Mullins is not far behind.
And the spread has already increased. Remember, we talked about just 6 seconds separated the front to the back after only 25 laps. It's already up to 14 seconds. Back to Johnny Baldridge and J-Bo. So this field's spreading itself apart. It doesn't help when Baldridge has a crushed in front nose. That's going to make it so difficult to try and pull. While for J-Bo, just it seems his technical alliance has missed the set this week.
He may be able to make a couple changes down on pit road, but if your set's too far away, there's not much you can do without a full rework down in the garage. Atchison, just behind these guys, has got inside of Matt Forcarper. Wasn't able to make the move stick, though, through turns 3 and 4. Or 1 and 2.
Look at this, though. Again, Mullins just able to get better rotation compared to some of his teammates right now. Just Levine in that same scenario where he's losing time to Cale Gale. So that rotation has been so key and such a talking point. If you can't carry about, give or take, right now the top speeds in the corner, 164 miles an hour once you get back on the gas, you're not looking good as a group right now on old tires. If you're having to back off to, say, the 160s, or it bogs down off the corner, you're not going to have a pretty time, as pit stops may be starting. The 21 of Wilborn has just called him. He's going to come in.
So, lap 50. Daniel Wilborn dives to the lane, and he is the first driver to do so. Will this trigger a chain reaction up and down the order? Started this race from 30. He's got good outright pace, but didn't have much in the way of race pace, it seemed. Not certainly the challenge of the leaders. This is looking a little bit dicey, and it is dicey. Now they're 3 wide. Kane Cook goes right down to the low side of the racetrack. The 28 says, hell no. No thanks.
I thought Hernandez was going to turn himself across the nose there. I don't think he realized how close it was. Oliveira just going to back off as quick, but Kane Cook, no surprise. If he feels he's got a quick car, he's going to take it 3 in this type of situation and push. Just drove right on by him. This is just the second half pace coming back in.
I think Hernandez overcompensated at that time, went way up the track in 1 and 2. Michael Guest is back on the bumper. Not of Ashton Crowder, but this time he's trying to force his way by Jesse Atchison. He's helped Atchison make the move before Carper, and now he's going to get by him pretty easily down in 1 and 2. So that car working really well. Look out for Michael Guest as this run goes on. Ashton Crowder isn't making progress quite as quickly as him anymore. As for Carper's going to fight back on Atchison, Crowder goes by Nia.
I don't know if the legacy car this week is as strong as the Darlington car, and to be quite frank so far, just seems to be just about a half a tenth, maybe a quarter tenth quicker per lap on average, some of their cars, and that in turn is allowing them to close up the gap to the point where lines already within the draft nearly avoid Hogan up at the front. So while Hogan's focusing on this 88, that 6 is just creeping back on in and closing it up more and more to the point where he's either been dead even or
quite the back for Carper. Got hit by Blake Nia because he had to check up to avoid the left-hand door of Ashton Crowder, and that's going to drop him half a dozen spots.
Let's take a look at this replay, and there's going to be some tempers from this. Crowder has been... Oh, he actually got help from near there, yeah. Matt Forkaba just started to slide, it looks like, a little up the track and got some help from behind.
Yeah, being pinched down by Crowder. He had to, I think, back off the throttle more than anything, and that's why Nia ended up in his bumper as we ride on board, looking over the rear bumper of Eduardo Oliveira's car. And we should look to the right, because right there is Brad Davies coming up to lap him. Although, is that maybe there's 288 cars on the racetrack?
Yeah, yes there is. Jonathan Hernandez is also an 88 car, by the way. But, to be specific on this, it's looking like everyone's just trying to stretch it here. I'm looking at the data right now, the numbers maybe can get to just about halfway, but again, it's not enough to make it on the gas. In fact, Davies is coming in this time. He's pressed the button, here he goes. Hand out the window.
Figuratively speaking. So he takes that low lane, and he hits the brake pedal and tries to get it wound down as he hooks it to the left and hits pit road speed perfectly. Expect Boyd Hogan, Harrison Lyon to come in this time by as well. In response to that. Don't want to leave themselves vulnerable to the undercut here.
Yet the undercar has been decent as Hogan's going to come in this time by. Some other drivers have discussed potentially going for the overcut. The risk is, with the equalization point being essentially 31.1 to 31.3 for the best of teams with this type of track for NIS, you're going to have to think about that on how you try and time up the stop. You go too long, you're likely going backwards. You go too early, you're getting freight train.
So Lyon did not come in, but Hogan did, of course. Patrick Moose and Justin Levine also pulled the trigger and came to pit road. Don't think Daniel Wilborn will be a factor in this because he missed his pit bay, had to reverse it up. So he has been out there quite a bit longer on those fresh tyres. You'll definitely find a gain of some description. Samuel Roush running in 13th now, gets by on the inside of Sean Powell. And Jake Hickson going to follow him through.
No pressure. Just have to make sure you're on your best behavior tonight. If any tempers flare out, this is the guy who's going to punish you for said tempers. One of the members of the iRacing staff, and someone who's going to be very, very keen to keep an eye on stuff like that. Now keep an eye as well, though, for some of these cars once they come off the pit lane. For drivers like Mayers and company. The fresher tires, they're going to have about a second or two faster per lap times. You don't have to draft either, though, at the same time. You're likely losing time in the long run.
Well, they've got to get by all those slower cars, and Justin Levine says, I'll take the express route on the inside and go by 3 of you with ease. Patrick Moose will do the same thing behind him through 3 and 4, and they'll give him the room. As Eduardo Oliveira comes in, Harrison Line also in the lane.
James Mullins as well coming down and in. So they're gone as long as they can. Still a one-stopper from here, but this is still a decent amount of flexibility. Now if I'm Cale Gill, though, he might be able to go a little bit longer because he did take tires. He says, I think at the same time, though, I don't want to lose the time. He's just going to sacrifice it.
Blake Nia pitted a lap before Mullins, Lyon, and co. Cal Gale got it slowed up pretty nicely. Everyone's got down to pit lane relatively cleanly, which is good to see. Still waiting on Michael Guest, Kane to come into the lane. Kane Cook as well. And Ashton Crowder. All those guys that started in the 30s, Justin.
Yeah. Over the radio. The crazy thing is, Kane Cook's apparently struggling with turning. Doesn't look like that car's struggling with turning in terms of the pace and the positions gained, because I wish I had that car if it's struggling to turn, because that car probably would run away. Here comes the pit stops, though, once again. I think he nearly got hit behind, Roush did, by the car behind him.
Looks like they escaped it, though. No damage I can see on either of their cars. Joshua Campbell also in the lane. There's Brad Davies. Still the lead car. Once it all shakes out, it would seem. No one would have been able to jump him.
Yeah, Hogan actually lost 3 seconds in the exchange for the offset for the pit stops. So might be able to just try and run away. It's down to already 2.1 seconds all of a sudden, though. And closing in fairly quickly, just 1 lap difference on the tires. So plays as, again, some of the drivers who came down and topped off still going like Guest and company. You know what? I think we may have just seen something here, Ryan, with this. You know how we talked about drivers who stayed on the track? Yeah. Looking at the numbers, 59 laps in, they might be able to somehow sneak away with a 1-stop if they save the fuel. This is why they haven't pit yet. This may be one of the smartest calls of the race of the season. If they can get the car and there are 3-4 laps, it's doable.
I'd like to go on the record as saying I broached this idea earlier on and you shut me down.
Yep, because I didn't think it was, again, possible because of the differences on the distance on fuel. But if you save it in terms of gas and don't push, it's doable somewhat. We talked about how you'd lose a lot of time right now. I don't know if it's going to be the winning call, but it's a call that can save you 34 seconds in the pit lane at minimum at the end of this race.
So if they're going to make it home, I think lap 70 would be the pit window for them.
I think that's the furthest they can even try making, unless they've been clutch and coasting here, at least in the mid-run. It might explain why drivers like Cook took their time to get through the field here.
They're going to do it, aren't they? Lap 69. So, now, this is good, but if a caution comes out, they're going to get buried. Because they're going to fall a long way back, aren't they? Whoa. There goes the 8. picking his way through on fresh tyres. You'll see James Mullins appear to the right-hand side as well in a minute. There he is.
There goes. Yeah, that. Just gonna have to let him on cleanly. Just let off and, well, not do that. That could have been close. But if they were clutching coasting in the traffic, this may have been a big brain play. It's high risk, high reward, though, like you said, because if there's a caution after they take the stop, and that it's going to be difficult. They're coming next time by, and that's going to be just enough maybe to get them to make it on fuel.
Done 71 laps, 64 to go when they pit. We had a 4-lap caution period. If they get a late caution, they'll be golden because they'll have come through on their fresh rubber by that time.
And because Crowder and Guest topped off, at the very least, they have an extra set. So if we get a caution, they're going to be golden if they want to take that. Here they go.
Wow, look at Kane Cook. Ultra committed. Didn't get it slowed down. He was locked up after the line, but I think he had got it slowed up and straight into their pit bays almost straight away. Crowder, wow. He must have been right on the marks there. I thought for sure he'd slid through his bay. And they are joined as well by Matthew Benson and Sean Powell. Everyone has now pitted.
So now this is going to get interesting to see once everyone has to come down here in about 25 laps or so. Can whoever's on fresher tires reel in the cars who are going for the one stop now in the span of 34 laps? This changes a lot here for this.
A director saying that Moose was clutching there. I couldn't hear it. But if he is, I don't see the point because
temps.
they are
temps. The temps.
Yes,
if you
of course.
clutch and coast, it cools down the oil temps. If that's what we talked about with the tape. If you don't do, that's one of the ways you have to cool it in the traffic. So I think Moose may have put on a lot of tape for this car, and in the draft and short run, he has to do that to make sure it doesn't pop. And it helps him in turn for the straight line speed for this run.
I'll just be quiet then. This is why I'm not a pro driver. Jesse Atchison is about to get by Timu Toika. That's for 8th place, right there. Seth Knoll behind as well. Jonathan Hernandez following closely. So Brad Davies leads by 2.4 seconds over Boyd Hogan. Harrison Lyons 5.5 back in 3rd. Kane Cook's last lap was a 29.642. That is 2 seconds quicker than what Brad Davies did. So give him 10 laps and he is going to be all over them.
Eventually it's going to bounce back if it stays this way, though, with the green flag run. But the trends have said there's been at least a couple cautions per race. There hasn't been just one in a top split race so far this week. You got to think eventually someone's going to make a mistake here, especially with the difference on calls and how difficult this track has been. But the downside to that philosophy, if you're some of these drivers wanting to get on a fair and even playing field again, is everyone spread themselves out a decent bit for positions. It's just lap traffic management that could cause chaos.
Ooh, that's very tight, isn't it? Coming off turn 2. Glued to the bumper of Seth Knoll. It's going to help him retain that spot over that car down low. No, there it is. There's the contact. Hernandez up into the fence. No way. 24 spins. Does he stay off the track, Ossie and Walsh? Yes, he does. How on earth did that not bring out the caution?
I don't think they went around, and that's going to cause some frustration. We talked about a bit of the struggles with some of the ERG cars earlier. Hernandez especially fell off a lot. I think he loosened up the car, and here's the tough part. If you've got a tight chassis, you try make an adjustment to the spring perch, it's going to cause that to drift like that. Just drifted right to Walsh, and just Walsh is the innocent bystander there as Hernandez really got snappy loose right at the corner where it just locked up the chassis at the back end.
Well, it is Friday night NAS. We've been breaking trends all season long. So, every race has had more than one caution. This might be the one that has just one. It's certainly been one of the cleaner races of the week, I would say, all season long from what we've seen. Strength of field 5,500 as well, which is right up there.
Yeah, and the thing is with aerodynamic damage, you get any type of damage, it's like a parachute, as we've talked about. But the main key thing too, you get quarter panel damage. That compounds the issue at these types of tracks with this package. One little curl up can cost you half a tenth. One massive curl to the right rear quarter panel, if you make contact with the wall or in a car, can cost you up to 3/10 as it completely shreds your right rear off because it just takes all of the downforce right off that tire and all the side force.
Cal Gale starting to put some pressure on the back of the number 12, James Mullins. Mullins opting to use that apron down there through the tyre, which is perfectly legal. Only places you can't dip below the line is where it's a yellow line, such as at Daytona and Talladega. Keith Bridgman down on the bottom side, just getting out of the way. He's 63 laps down.
Yep, that is the time it takes, by the way, to replace a full motor. 31 minutes as, oh boy. Looks like Cale Gale's now starting to get that little loose sensation we talked about that we just seen with Hernandez, their 4-tire drifting.
Alright, what are the lap times then for our late pitters, Guest and Cook? 30.8 and a 30.8. Davies a 31.0. So already the lap time's starting to equalise.
Well, like I said, that was to be expected, but again, this is the long con where wouldn't be surprised to hear these drivers clutching, coasting in the middle of the corner in the next few laps or so if they haven't already. Sure, they just get enough. You can with the daytime, as we talked about, though, with it being not as quick speeds compared to the 190s from the nighttime, to be able to make it at 64 at the very most. So they're right on the money to make it on the gas. But the cars to watch on this strategy still. Crowder, along with Bruno and Powell. The downside for Bruno and Powell, they're a good 11 seconds behind these cars.
And Crowder as well. Look how far back he is. 6 seconds back. If memory serves me right, I mean it often doesn't, I don't think he was that far back before they pitted.
Yeah, he was about 2.5 seconds back at that moment, but his pace is just falling off quicker than the dead zone machines, and it's been the case all season. Where we've seen that Trouble Hernandez just lost several spots, by the way, on the racetrack, and he is dropping like a stone on the pylon all of a sudden. I think he had to let by all those cars, and that could have been disastrous if he was in the wrong spot. In fact, he's having trouble even turning the car. Yeah, it looks like the toe's completely knocked out of the thing.
Wonder if that's going to bring him down to pit road.
Yeah, that car is definitely going to be hurt for the rest of this race. And normally you adjust the offset on your steering wheel once you get your chassis all built up to adjust for how straight you want the wheel to be, or to be dead on straight. You don't want it to be about 11 o'clock. As Harrison Lyon is saying, it's Lyon's choice o'clock. Your winner of the California Clash, by the way, just a couple days ago.
How's this going to work out then? Harrison Lyon's been coming good all race long. How often have we seen this? The very fast charge to the front of the field. and then slowly over the rest of the race, working himself up through the last couple of spots he needs, and then right at the end, emerging at the front of the field. 3.8 seconds back he is now from Brad Davies. Boyd Hogan will be sitting behind him, hoping to try and learn something about what Lion might be doing differently. And we might discover, though, that his setup is just a bit better.
And that's the tough part when it comes to building setups, you know, where top teams and technical alliances will spend up to, in some cases, 3,000 laps of track. The tough part is to be able to try and catch up if you're not in said groups, or in turn may not have the same markers. Some teams may find ways to not show that same speed, so to speak, so you can't copy and duplicate it. If you make it easy for your competitors to just take a picture and look at how the back end of the car even looks, they can guess how it looks in the span of 30 seconds. That's been a talking point from some of the big groups. So that's the tough part on how do you catch up, is you just have to put in laps and seat time and get more and more data to figure out, well, will this adjustment work? Will this adjustment work, etc. As we take a look at that train for fifth again.
Mullins, by the way, is back inside the top 5 after his early dip in pace. He just found his way by Levine and Cale Gale. I can't say Gale without also saying Cale.
I mean, Cale Gale, you have to remember that major win back in the day where he fought hard with Kyle Busch at Homestead. Real world driver, ran his own technical alliance at one point. Now part of Bobby Dale Earnhardt's Legacy Esports, a big part of their program where a lot of their drivers are real world competitors. They recently expanded to build a short track program and a road course program. One of their drivers, in fact, will be racing in the Truck Series next year. So this is a team, again, on the rise, in part because of having people like this who have the real world knowledge to help the team grow and get the connections it wants to get where it wants to be.
6th place for him is a solid run. Started 8th, showing nice consistent pace all through this one. 42 to go. How far away are we from seeing those 2 stop drivers, which is most of the field, making the next dive to the lane?
I would have to think in about maybe 6 laps we start seeing the window open up. We may see a lot of drivers try and stretch in, and that shouldn't be a surprise though, because you get a caution flag, you might be able to pin some cars a lap down, and most of the drivers in turn would have to take tires. So I think we start seeing the calls come in pretty quickly. Others, I wouldn't be surprised to see them try and stretch as long as they can, hoping and praying for a yellow flag to get them equalization and bunch everyone back up.
They got to give themselves enough time, don't they? That if they stay green, they can catch back up as much as they could. But they can't leave it too late as well, otherwise they can't go too early, I mean. Otherwise, tyres will start to plateau out again. Looking at how far back Kane Cook is, 19 seconds. That gap's gotten bigger.
Well,
so
part
traffic is wreaking havoc, isn't it?
Well, that was what we talked about earlier, right? The traffic's going to hold you up if you reach them in the wrong spots where you're going to have to lift. At the same time, they might be thinking, you know what? May as well just clutch and coast, sacrifice time, make sure they'll have enough time to get to the end on the gas, because with the deltas, and not including the apex off the corner, mind you, for the pit lane, and down on that apron on 1 and 2, they're going to have about a cushion of maybe 40 plus seconds to work with. There's Justin Levine, though, and Boyd Hogan just opened up the pit window.
Well, there we go. 38 to go. We're seeing drivers making their second stop of the race. Remember as well that we had a caution in that first run. Can Guest and Cook make it without a caution on the second stage of the race. It's not guaranteed.
Especially with some of the craziness we've seen and knowing some of the temperament of some of the drivers in some of the races. I think part of the thing that's helping the balance still is having Samuel Roush in here, because if someone starts arguing over the radio, that's going to get shut down quick tonight compared to some of the earlier races this week. Looks like the Nexus car's coming in, at least one of them.
That's the 19 of Patrick Moose. Got it slowed down nicely. They're all getting down to pit road. Very good today. Good to see. Timo Toika's on the lane as well. Austrian Walsh as well. Johnny Balderidge. All of them taking 4 tyres and 2 cans of fuel. Here's 10 of love. Looking high on Eduardo Oliveira. Not finding much progress there. These two will be part of the group that pits early here. Well, pits again, I should say. But not this time by.
Aaron Mullins wanting to pit this time by as the leader is in. Davies and Lyon are both in their lanes and boxes. So this will put Cale Gale back in the race lead once again. Oh! Unbelievable! What in the world?
So Mullins must have realised he's not going to make it into the lane there, and thought he was going too fast. He's had to abort it, and well,
you know what? You know what he did, Ryan? If we could get an air look specifically from the front nose, there is a bump right at the pit lane entry where if you don't arc it right and you hit the splitter on the bump right about here, the car shoots up the track. Hit that bump, tried to save it, and unfortunately, I believe that was the 24, just hit him in the back end hard as he tried to avoid getting demolished.
Austrian Walsh, for the second time today, is the innocent victim in a crash that does not bring out the caution. Here's his view of it. He knows Mullins is pitting. He's going to be out of the way. Oh, no. There's nothing he could do about that. Absolutely nothing.
They're probably having that discussion on the radio, but Walsh is probably thinking, if it rains, it pours, and now tonight, now it's going to be pouring damage repairs. On the bright side, Tanner Love's in the lead. On the dark side, the one-stoppers are right behind him as Cale Gale's off and away, who just avoided that carnage.
So, first car that has pitted, Brad Davies. 20 seconds behind Guest and Cook. That's how far back Guest and Cook were on him before he pitted. They gained 5 seconds and then stopped skating anything. Wonder if we'll see the same trend here for Davies. We'll get to about 15 seconds back and then start to fade again.
Yeah, he's going to need to use those fresh tires and quick. It's 18 seconds, the gap between him and Guest and company. At the very least, I think he gets to Crowder. But from that point on, it's the question mark of will the tires burn out too quick to get up to Guest and Cook, because they're likely going to fall off maybe to the 4s and 5s like they are now. Maybe get a little worse. It just depends here on how this all fares out as Hickson's off and away.
Because there comes a time when the tyres plateau, and then the lap times remain the same pretty much eternally until you really use up the last tread on those tyres. Because Tanner Love right now is holding his ground in front of Michael Guest. He's on that two-stop strategy.
What did we talk about again before with the draft and fuel mileage? At this point, Guest is just riding the draft, I have to think. It's just watching where cars like this go. Because if they try and fight these cars, or don't pay attention to their mirrors, or they make a one bad judgment call move, that's going to spell craziness and, in turn, completely botch their strategy.
can see a slight advantage that Guest has coming out of the corners. He's able to put the power down a little bit earlier. That was very evident through turn 4 that time.
Yeah, you can hear onboard Guest really still clutching, coasting to try and make sure. Tanner Love now coming in, though. They're going to lose their drafting friend.
Brad Davies, 13 seconds back. Still coming quick. Love, oh, just about going to get into the lane. As Kane Cook gets to the inside of Michael Guest, taking the lead away.
It just took advantage of Guest having to get off the gas, and now he's trying to run off and away and get some distance. Now the only cars in front... Go ahead.
30.1 for Davies, 31.7 for Cook. So Davies' time is still blisteringly quick compared to those top two. He hasn't found that plateau yet.
Yeah, all the drivers in front at this point, to the fresher tires at this point, are the ones on the one stop. Powell and Benson, they've already been freight trained by Davies. This is going to get very close. Davies may get there in the final 15 laps or so, maybe 10 to go, based on the pace that he's running and if there's the fall-off we're expecting.
Right now, though, if he keeps this up, he's going to get there before we even reach 15 to go, I think. He is flying. Kane Cook is running away from Michael Guest. He's got half a second in hand over him already. 8 seconds back to Crowder. He's really starting to fade. Davies again, 30.1. No drop off at all. And he's only a second behind Ashton Crowder now.
Yeah, as long as he doesn't get held up by the traffic here, I think he's in decent shape. And the traffic's going to try and slide up. Smart move there by Crowder. Just slide up out of the way. Still plenty of cars, though, separating the top cars and the rest of the field.
Lapped cars are all that stand between them now, but a lot of them, as you say, Brad Davies, he lost 2 tenths there behind Crowder. As they come off of turn 4, had to just check up, I think, as Crowder moved up the road. Wow. Davies is looking strong. 24 to go. He's got plenty of time up his sleeve. 30.5. The times are starting to fade.
This is the concern now. And he still has Blake Neer in front of him. Still has a couple other cars at least in front of him. It's not going to be an easy task to even get up there to have a shot, let alone try and fight for the race win.
He's got Blake Neer, Kyle Myers, Tanner Love, and Jesse Atchison between him and the leaders at the moment. And then any other cars that leaders put a lap down between now and then. 30.6.
Just looking at all the stopwatches and the times right now. Some of the drivers like Tanner Love are still in the 29-second bracket who went for the overcut. But with how this race is played out, just 16 cars are on the lead lap. 16. So if there's a caution, that's going to really box in a lot of competitors.
We've only had the one caution, and it's meant that the pace of the front runners is just completely overtaken those guys middle to backpack, whose pace might not be that bad, but field spread is just so big when you're running wide open for the early phases of the stint. There's Kane Cook. He's in traffic now as well. Gap's down to 5.9, but Davies is getting closer and closer to Cook's time. 30.8 for him, 31.3 for Cook. Only half a second between them now.
Well, I guess it's not going to have an easy time here. Love and Atchison are trying to take him 3.
Tanner Love down low. Atchison's got by as well. So that's held Guest up. That cost him a lot of time.
And I think Guest just had started pushing right at that moment, but here's the downside. Kane Cook, I think, felt he was comfortable 5-10 laps ago, and that's why we've seen him try and get that buffer. Now he's got that bubble. The thing is, 5 seconds and quickly shrinking is this gap now between P1, P2, and P3, down to 4.3.
Davies and Guest were held up by Love and Atchison, but Brad Davies won't be, because they've gone and checked out. Or Atchison actually still behind Kane Cook and had to check up to avoid getting into him through turn 1. Being careful how he gets by him. Kane Cook should give him the inside through 3 and 4 here. He does, but that's going to hurt his time just a little bit.
And we talked about how he felt he was too tight. Just couldn't get it cut down to the bottom of the track for the exit of 4 to be able to get the draft as much as I think he wanted. Still, at the very least, take a deep breath and know that he's got a technical alliance mate behind. The downside is he's got to know that this car is breathing down their necks and fast. 16 to go this time.
Michael Guest, very quick last lap, only 2/10 slower than Brad Davies. And starting to close back in on Kane Cook. If they start to battle, it is going to hand it straight to Davies on a platter. He'll close right up to them. So they've got to be very careful about how they go about battling if they start to close up any further.
Then it's down now to just 2/10 the difference, but Davies has been very consistent all race. No mistakes, no slides at all, really. That thing's just been planted around the racetrack. And we see what the angle of the splitter, it just seems like the way they set it up to where, yes, its angle to touch down the straights is enough where it's completely sealed by the time you get around the rest of the track.
Kane Cook responded to Michael Guest's pace. Brad Davies is now in traffic. Kyle Myers right in front of him through 1 and 2, holding him up.
Yeah, this pinch right there, trying to avoid the lap car and give him space, is going to cost him about a couple hundredths. I think at this point, he's going to need to gain another 10th or so extra per lap to have a shot here.
His pace dropped by a 10th, so did the top 2, so there's still 2/10 between them, 3.7 seconds. The rest of the field isn't in the factor. 8 seconds back to Harrison Lyon, Boyd Hogan, who are battling for 4th. Crowder's fallen to 12 seconds away, by the way, in 6th.
Crowder's car's just falling off a cliff to the 31.9s in some cases with the traffic, but the thing is with Kane Cook here, yes, he's getting dirty air, but at the same time, you don't have a draft here at Las Vegas, it loses you a couple tenths down the straights. If he loses Atchison here, I think that's where Davies may start to dig again.
Well, Davies is losing time right now. Jake Hickson just went by them.
Crazy thing is, and you're seeing this on the onboard, not only is he still clutch and coasting, still close on the fuel mileage, but even when he isn't clutch and coasting, has to pull down the straights, just the way that car has been set up for the downforce just is faster than Atchison on fresher tires, mind you. Just able to reel him on in and then sacrifice the time back to make sure he gets it on the gas and has enough gas to make the checkered here in the next 11 laps.
Davies is lapping slower right now. Well, he was. But he lost quite a bit as Jake Hickson got by, and here comes Michael Guest with the run out of turn 2, looking low on Kane Cook for the lead of the race, and Cook's going to let him have it. He knows if they battle that Davies is going to be right there. 10 to go this time by.
Now does Guest have enough? We've seen him fall off a little bit. You'd have to think that he was trying to save there as well, but it's still about 3 seconds to cushion with the drafting partner, as Boyd has had to come down for a problem.
Now, Boyd was part of the 2-stop strategy, so it's not a fuel issue for him, unless somehow he didn't put enough fuel in the car when he pitted. So that's disastrous, and that ruins a solid top 10 run for our pole sitter. 9 laps left. It's Michael Guest by 3/10, a 31.3. Plays a 31.5 from Kane Cook. Brad Davies a 31.09. He's in the draft with Hickson. Is that helping him or hurting him?
You're gonna not believe this. Apparently Hogan and his crew never gave him gas. So the pit crew having a problem in the sim just cost him a top 5. He's gonna be fuming.
Maybe he forgot to tick it or something. That's bizarre.
And apparently Cecil Green's in the same box. That's the same technical alliance. Something's going on with all these cars. What's going on here?
They got someone up there playing crew chief, forgetting to hit yes on the fuel box. That is so strange for Hogan and Green, and disastrous as well. Ruins their day late on in the piece. 31.1 for Davies. 31.3 for Cook. 31.3 for Guest. More and more traffic as well. 2.6 seconds the gap.
It's closing out a couple tenths. I think Davies knows that those cars up in front are still concerned on the gas. This is now his big shot to try and take this. This is going to be close.
4/10 he gained that lap. Guest and Cook dropped off a bit as they got by Calvin Allison. 4 Carpers fading back towards Hickson and Davies now. That could hold both of them up. Hickson, of course, is a lap down, but he is towing Davies around the racetrack. Quickly running out of time. Gap's 2 seconds. 5 to go as they cross the stripe.
The thing is, Davies has to get by 2 more lap cars to have a shot, and he is actually using them as a pole. Hickson and Matt Forcampa. These 2 cars may be the deciding factor here if they hold him up at all at this point. They're helping him now get the draft, but once Green gets here, who's right behind here, that's where that time might dissipate, and that might cost him.
Off of turn 4, Davies has to check up as Forcampa slid up top. Green goes by straight away there, and now Davies is inside of Hickson. Will Hickson let him have it? He might not want to because he's not in the lucky dog spot if a caution come out in the next couple of laps. But Davies goes by. Still managed to 31.1 on that last lap, but the gap's 1.8. It's not come down as much as it was the previous 3 or 4 laps.
Yeah, that may be the difference right there with that. Getting by him, he still has to get by Calvin Allison too.
Michael Guest is pulling away on Kane Cook. Cecil Green's gone by Cook. He's about to go by Guest as well. They're still lapping slower, but I think Davies is not going to have enough time. He's going to end up coming short here. He's got 1.6 seconds and only 2 laps to pull it in. Michael Guest leads us.
And now he has to get by Atchison. Thing is, will these guys have enough fuel? Because I think some of the other cars who are on the same strategy are starting to fall apart here.
Coming through 3 and 4. Can Guest and Cook get it home? 1.5 seconds in hand over Davies, who's still closing. White flag is in the air. One more time around at Vegas.
At this point, they may have to clutch it and try and hope it rolls in some case. I think they may have saved enough, though. This is going to be tight.
Down the back straight for the final time as Michael Guest by 3.5 tenths through 3 and 4. All looking good for the one-stop strategy for Guest and Cook, but Michael Guest out front as he comes to the line. Guest is going to win at Las Vegas.
What a call. And that may have been the smartest call I've seen this season in NAS. What a job.
Cale Gale and Justin Levine fighting to the line for 5th. Gale going to take it. Crowder ends up 7th. So the one-stop only worked for 2 of them. Davies and Lyon finishing 3rd and 4th. Lyon was charging at the end.
That's a technical alliance clinic. Dead zone 1, 2, 3, 4. Torched the field. Just absolutely demolished them tonight.
As the guest celebrates, let's take a look at our full results then at the end of 134 laps at Las Vegas. 134 laps. The gap was only 0.2 of a second for Michael Guest over Kane Cook. Brad Davies home in 3rd. You might be disappointed with that. Close, but no cigar. Harrison Lyon 4th. Cale Gale 5th. Justin Levine, Ashton Crowder 6th and 7th. Patrick Moose takes 8th ahead of 10-11 and Seth Knoll.
11th spot tonight, Sean Powell, one of the drivers, trying the one stop to get it to the end after the quickie caution. 11th is where he finishes in front of Timo Toyka by just about 0.8. The last drivers in the lead lap, Oliveira and Benson. Jake Hickson, 1 lap down with Matt Forcapa, with Samuel Roush in 17th. Kyle Mayers, Blake Neer, and Boyd Hogan's not going to be happy here. A top 5 car. Doesn't get fuel put in the car for the final stint of the race. Instead, he finishes in 20th.
21st, Calvin Allison, Jason Brophy, Joshua Campbell, Mike Bruno, Johnny Baldridge, and Cecil Green was the last car a lap down. Jesse Atchison, 27th, and then drivers with issues, Patello, Hernandez, James Mullins, Sheehan Walsh, Keith Bridgman, Daniel Wilborn, JD Willis, and Tyler Justice. Your 35-car field starting 33rd and winning, Michael Guest, starting 34th and 2nd for Kane Cook, 35th and 4th for Harrison Lyon. Starting positions don't matter for those 3. So at the end of this one, it seems that the one stop is the way to go at Las Vegas. That one caution that we had at the start of the race was enough for Guest and Cook to save the fuel and save enough to get there to the end, even without a caution in their second stint. We are going to wrap things up then at the end of this show. Make sure to go and like Sim Speedy Sports Network on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to stay up to date with all of our latest broadcasts. Make sure you tune in at the same time next Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, here on the iRacing Esports Network for the next round of the NASCAR iRacing Series. 5 rounds left to go. But tonight, though, from myself, Ryan Jones, and Justin Prince alongside, and Jay Kennedy behind the scenes. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
This is fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's got rid of the outside of both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taken Anderson. Anderson's up to
Oh my god! Oh, big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
6 very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly. Oh, there we go. Oh no! That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?